Welcome to Powering Through Life, and I'm your host, Teresa Sims. Each week on Powering Through Life, my guest and I will discuss a special topic that is close to their heart. Together, we will explore the challenges they have faced in life and learn what strategies and tools they have used to power through their life. So welcome to Powering Through Life.
Hey, welcome again to Powering Through Life, and I'm your host, Teresa Sims, and I have an exceptional guest with me today. Her name is Chapple, and Faye is an award-winning global business strategist, master speaker trainer, speaker, author, radio host, and entrepreneur onto that as well. Faye is also the founder of the Mastermind City and On Point Mentors global community committed to professionals, giving them training and platforms they need to connect, share, and grow. Yay. Faye, welcome to Powering Through Life.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Oh, I'm so excited we get to do this. It's been a little bit coming, but you know what? Great things come to those who wait.
That's right.
Yeah. So I would like to have you today share your journey that happened several years ago when you were going up to your cottage. So would you like to start there for us?
Sure. It was 12 years ago, actually, almost 2009. And time flies. So, and I had a great life. I was in corporate. I was running companies throughout Europe and Asia. I was also doing consulting. I had a couple of great kids. And the youngest was only 3. So, and then the other 2 were teenagers. You guys can figure that out. So he was a little bit of a pleasant surprise. But, so it was the first weekend actually that I went with my husband and my little guy to the cottage and left the teenagers alone. So that was cool. And we were just in the midst of buying another cottage on the water, which was my husband's dream. Not really mine, because, it was more work. And so we were going to just clean up the old one so we could put it up for sale, and we were going to close on the new one the next week. And so everything was great. Like, there was no issues, no problems. And literally in 10 seconds, everything changed. So he had a brainstem stroke, and it was in the middle of the afternoon, and my little guy was asleep on the couch. So I called my neighbor, who's a very good friend of mine. I said, come get Gray, carry him over to your place. I got to call the ambulance. And she did. Well, I called the ambulance first. There's about 10 times I called them because we're up north, a long ways away from anyone. And so she went and grabbed him and took him in, and I waited 45 minutes for the ambulance. And then, they said, okay, we're going to take him to Barrie because maybe he can have that shot where it reverses. And then we got there, and they were all, pretty positive, the doctors. And then they said, well, it was actually a bleed. So there's nothing we can do. And so we had him in ICU, and he didn't wake up or anything. And then one of the ICU doctors came in and said, get your kids up here tomorrow because he might not make it through the night. And which was a very weird thing to say in retrospect, right? Like, doctors don't usually tell you those things. But anyways, you don't know when I was, pretty young. And I remember sitting there all night going, is this like really happening? Am I going to be a widow, or my kid's not going to have a dad? It was very odd. I called, my parents. They went over because I didn't want to tell the teens, right?
Right.
And then basically, he made it through the night. Took us a lot of phone calls and craziness to get him down to Toronto and get him checked out. But he was in the hospital for 6 weeks. We didn't know the whole time whether he'd make it or not. And my young daughter had to look after the little guy and still do her applications for university, and the other one was going into high school. And so she ran the ship. I didn't leave the hospital for the entire time because if anyone's been through this stuff, that you have to be your own advocate because nobody's out there going to do it for you.
No, that's true, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's an unfortunate fact, but it really is true. Now, Faye, could you explain what a brainstem aneurysm,
Oh
brainstem
yeah, it
aneurysm?
was. Well, you don't know. You're born with and it's called an AVM, and it's a malformation in a blood vessel, and it could be in anywhere. It could have been in your arm, and you don't know it when you're born with it. And most people, it will burst by the time they're about 50, and usually it's not a good chance of making it through it. His happened to be in the brainstem, which is the worst place. So, and because he played a lot of hockey and he was in good shape, he made it through. But he is, he can't walk. He's in a wheelchair. He's got 24-hour-a-day tremors. He's got double vision. A lot of deficits, just a lot. So, you make it, but your quality is a little challenging. So he's been home with us, and first 2 years it was just me and the kids, and I was working full time because you don't expect to go through all your money and lose all your income when you're in your 40s. So yeah. So, and you don't know, and I worked like crazy, and I was working and looking after the kids and looking after him, and had to do everything, right? Feed him, change him, everything, because when you're in your 40s too, what's interesting in the hospitals is they don't look at you like they would if you're in your 70s or 80s. So they didn't even tell me what was available to me. So I thought nothing, because they literally say, okay, he's going to make it. This is 6 weeks later. So, okay, take him home. And that's all they do.
And then what?
And it's not, and so I remember, I mean, I try to share as much reality with people, because it's not like the movies, guys. If this happens to you, it's not like you sit there and reminisce about your days and all. It doesn't happen. It's like work, and it's hard, and the person you were with isn't the same person anymore. And so I remember getting him out in the wheelchair to go up to the house. And remember, we don't have ramps, we don't have anything, right? We have nothing.
Jeez.
So, but that's what they do. The hospital just puts you in the car and says go. And so it was crazy. And I remember the neighbors were all watching, and I walked through the front door, and I just kept thinking, I don't know what to do. Like, what am I supposed to do? I've never done this. I was at the point where I was done, you know what I mean, looking after people, and because the little guy was almost 4, and so they get to the age where they can do a little more.
Yep.
And then I was starting all over again, and I still had to now think about, okay, I was thinking about quitting work early, and I was going to enjoy the kids, and now the opposite was happening, which meant I'm going to have to work harder, because we're not going to have the money, and I have to raise these kids as a single parent, and I have to be a personal care worker for a very disabled husband.
Yeah.
And on top of all that, and I'm not trying to get sympathy, because I did all this. On top of all that, he's a single child, and his parents were both terminal with cancer. So I was looking after them too. So
you had your hands full, and
Yeah.
I've been in the elder care situation.
Yeah.
It's ugly, it's dirty, it's horrible.
Yeah.
But you love the individual, so you want to help.
Yeah.
But
yeah. But
you're
you
right.
don't know, you don't know what to expect, right? That's
Exactly.
the key. And so when it happens, and I was one of those people, like everybody else out there, well, will never happen to me, right? Until it does.
Yeah.
And then once it does, you're like, I don't have the skill set. I'm not equipped. I don't know what an advocate is. I don't know where I'm supposed to go for help. And how am I going to keep working? Because I travel the world in my job. And now I couldn't. So for the first couple of months, I was literally, I did conference calls with head office in London, England. I would stay up all night, in the middle of the night, to do the big calls, right? The board meetings. And then I get off at 5 or 6. And then I would start the day with looking after him, looking after my business, in Toronto, and then looking after the kids as well. So it was, I don't know how I got through it, to be honest. I do, but I don't, right?
Totally imagine that, Faye, because you also lost your partner, and you lost the person that was the other income and the person to help you with the kids and all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. It was almost like, pardon the expression, but he became one of the kids.
Well, he is, because that's what he's cognitively fine, but you look after him like you would look after a baby. Right. So it's just a bigger version. So you
Yeah.
have, on top of the regular stuff, but now, I tell this story all the time. It's really, I wrote it, I think, a million times in my social media, but the one thing I hate is I have nobody to take out the garbage. It sounds stupid, but like, I hate taking out the garbage. And every Tuesday I go out and grab the garbage and take it out. And I always say, the one thing that bothers me more than anything is this damn garbage. So,
It's
but
the
it's
little thing.
little things, right? Yeah, right. So when I go, I'll walk into a plaza and I'll look at people going to the movies. That's never going to happen for me, right? So it's those little things, or when you're walking down, Home Depot, and you realize that he's never going to be able to do that like I'm doing it, picking up all the stuff that I don't know how to fix. But then you think, wow, he's never going to have the opportunity to just walk down the aisle, right? Like of Home Depot. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's always the normal things in life. That's what you miss, not the big deal things, right?
Now, may I ask a question?
Yeah.
Is your husband aware of what has happened to him and what's missing in his life?
Yeah, he's
Okay.
cognitively there,
Okay.
which makes it, I think, a little more challenging, because your situation. If you didn't, it'd probably be easier to get through, a lot of it. I believe that your brain, has this kind of protection that comes over him. So when things are, when normally you would think he'd get upset about something or other, he doesn't as much now, 12 years later. He used to, obviously, in the beginning, but I think after a couple of years, I don't know, I think your brain just figures out how to protect itself. And so it changes, but like, it's not the one thing I think I would hope to get across to people is just that it's never what you think it's going to be, right? So, and I can tell you all my experiences, but if it happens to you, you'll have a different experience. So it's only, I can tell you what happened to get me through, what the strategies that I used, but they were strategies that worked for me. Doesn't mean it's going to work for you. It's kind of like, I heard somebody talk about grief the other day and didn't agree with what they were saying, because I believe grief, you figure that out on your own. Everybody's different. Everyone has a time frame. So it's kind of like this, when you have to go through a challenge or a tragedy, it's going to be what you make of it. So you have to kind of forge your own path, right?
Right. And I would imagine you did face that grief head on.
Yeah,
In
sure.
many ways, you were grieving
Well,
a lot of different things.
yeah, and it's different. So you obviously grieve the loss of the life you led and the person, but you don't really get to really grieve because the situation is ongoing. So you begin to kind of just figure out a rhythm to get through it. But people will say, oh, well, you're over it. Well, no, because I'm not really, it's still here, right? So when most people, if something happens and their partner passes away or something tragic happens, there's an end point, right? And so that however long it takes you to get after that is, everyone to each his own. For me, I'm still in the rhythm of it. So
yeah. And what did you do, Faye? Like, how did you feel yourself when this was all going on? Like, I know we get in caregiver mode and the urgency of the initial situation,
right.
but once things begin to settle down and you start to think, I don't want to say rationally again, but you need to.
Yeah.
What happened? What went on for you?
Well, I'm by trade, I'm a business strategist. So I'm good at strategy. I'm good at thinking linear. And so all the way, when he was in the hospital, I'd be writing on all the whiteboards, like all the stuff, because I knew that nobody really paid attention. So I was always doing something, and doing something to me is the best thing that you can do for yourself, is keep yourself busy and keep going. Because if you allow yourself at that point too much time to sit still, then everything would come at you. So the truth is, I had so many people relying on me that I realized, as I said, I had one was going into kindergarten, one was going into high school, and one was going into university.
Oh,
So I know.
oh,
So,
wow.
and as I said, I was looking after his parents. We had no help, so I was full time with him as well. And I realized that the only way I could survive was to literally put everything on my calendar and never deviate from that calendar. So I literally put everything that I must do. So I must feed him breakfast. I must give him a shower. I must get the kid to school. I might, all those things, right?
Yeah.
So those are all on my calendar. And then I would take the other slots and schedule and work. The good news for me was I was working, basically out of my briefcase, kind of, right? Because I was traveling the world and I worked at home. So I had the luxury of slotting in, as I could for a year and a half, until the company started getting tired of me not being able to fly. Right.
Well, and that's just kind of the inevitable of what went on, I would imagine, too. And you can't really blame them either.
You absolutely can't. But that's, again, the reality of making sure everyone understands everyone's really good to you in the beginning, like, because just like, all your friends come, running the first, couple weeks, but most people leave.
Yeah,
that's the truth. You are left usually with maybe one or two friends, but most of them leave because they were your friends as a couple, and they were your friends when you didn't have all these responsibilities. So what's interesting about that is you lose a lot of people that you're shocked to lose, but then the people that you end up meeting, the new ones, only know you in this situation. So they're great friends because they don't know you when you didn't have all this. So it's that part was great. But the truth is, I scheduled everything. I didn't look up. I got through the day and then, moved on to the next, made sure everybody was looked after, kept 2 years, kept to the schedule. Then I had to, I couldn't do corporate anymore. So I had to start a new business on top of everything else. And I would do that at night, and I would finally finish everything 11 o'clock at night. I'd put everyone to bed, and then I'd go to my bed and pull up my laptop and start working, because the truth is, you have to realize that when you're relying on two incomes and then one disappears, a big one, it's a problem. And there's no one waiting to help you anywhere.
Well, this is true. Now, can I ask you something?
Yeah.
You mentioned that you just put your head down and you got at it. Was that a form of avoidance?
No, I don't think it was avoidance at all. I wasn't trying to avoid the grief. I think I was trying to make sure that everything was looked after. And the only way I could do it was literally, I fill my calendar every day. Wow. So it wasn't that I was purposely trying to avoid, because who wouldn't want to deal with it and be able to move on? But I didn't have the luxury.
And you didn't have the time either, I would imagine, to dedicate to. No. So what did you do for yourself? I know you're one of your businesses you started was yoga. Was that correct?
Yeah, I started a health and wellness studio because to me, I'm a business person, so I can start anything. Yoga I had been doing since I was a little girl, and I thought, what a great thing I could do. I could start a health and wellness studio, and that way I could still be making money and doing business, but then I could do something for myself, which is yoga. So we did very well. It was a good business, but I was running the business, so I didn't really get to do any yoga. and the hours that I could only, again, dedicate a certain amount of hours, because then I had to look after my husband as well. So, it wasn't exactly, it was successful for everyone else, but it really wasn't that successful for me. And so, because again, it didn't really give me what I was looking for, which was a little bit of time. So, I pivoted again, and I'm not on purpose. There was a magazine doing an article about the studio, and I had known her through someone else, and so some editor from California called and did the interview, and then the girl who ran it, the publisher, called me and she said, "That's not what we're looking for." I was like, "What do you mean?" She goes, "I want you to tell your story." And I go, "What story?" She goes, "What happened." And I never really talked about it, not because I didn't want to. It was just that when it's yours, you feel like, well, everyone's got something, right? Like I'm just trying to survive like everyone else. So I wasn't special. And so, but I was like, yeah, I also didn't bother me. So I said, okay, no problem. So I did the story. And then what was fascinating was all these, my customers who only knew me as the owner of the yoga studio, were like coming up to me and going, "Oh my God, I didn't realize that was your situation. Like we would have never known." And I just always said, well, it didn't have anything to do with my business, but they were all the ones that said, you really need to get out there and tell your story and tell people so that they understand that they can make it too. And so as I began speaking again, I just started getting a lot of consulting opportunities, and Gord, my husband, was getting worse because you have a tendency to decline after a couple of years. And so I realized that I really needed to limit my time to a home office, and being able to do that way. So, I've been consulting and starting companies ever since.
You are exceptional at it, and I happen to know that very well. So you also did Feng Shui? How did you?
I do. Yeah. I know. Here, everything's all over the map. So before he got sick, actually, so I've been doing yoga forever. I was traveling all over the world in my job because I ran Europe and Asia for a retailer. And so I had all this time on my hands, so I would just take courses that were interesting to me. Well, I had been studying Buddhism for 5 or 6 years, and I'd always been interested in Feng Shui for a long, long time. So when I do something, I just say, okay, let me just go to whatever the certification is or the mastery, and that's what I'll do. And that's what I did. I studied under a master, and because I thought it was interesting. And then I did it for all my friends. And then friends had friends, and I was like, I have a job. I can't really do this. So what I did was I started writing a newsletter and a blog just so that the people that were asking me could get some information. And I think in like 6 months, I had like 1,000 people on the list, and people were, they were messaging me from like South Africa and from Australia. It was not my job. So, had another friend that was doing workshops in a store, and she's like, could you come do a couple of workshops for me when you're home? And I'm like, okay. So I did them, and then people started asking all the time. I was like, I can't. So I figured out how to put a PDF together and put it online and sell it with a little cart called E-Junkie. That's how long ago it was. And it was $5 a month. And and I just started, and that's when I became, that's why I fell in love with the online world.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is for you to keep your sanity in this chaotic world, you employ the techniques and the spiritualism of Feng Shui and yoga.
Yeah.
What else do you do, Faye, to keep
Buddhism is a big, I really loved being a student, and I love all the philosophies. So that really helps. So I don't do a whole lot. What I do is I'm very present in the moment. People always say, why aren't you really upset about this or this? And I was just like, well, because for any of us out there who've had something, catastrophic happen to them, you have a mind shift, and nothing really is that big a deal anymore. Right?
Very true.
So you just sort of like, somebody's like, oh, they're ranting and raving. I'm just like, whatever. So I'm pretty even. And I think, as I looked back, I always believed that yoga, doing it all those years, was what helped me deal with the physical, and what I needed to do to get healthy and make sure I stayed in balance. And Buddhism really taught me about how to understand death and being in the present moment. And that was kind of interesting that I never knew why I was attracted to Buddhism or why I studied it, but any students out there would know about how Buddhism speaks about death. And so even though my husband made it, as we had alluded to earlier, there is a death in a lot of other pieces in your life because of it.
Yes.
So I don't do anything. I don't go to spas. I don't get treatments. I don't do, if I have a few minutes of time, I really love to read. And I think you do too. Look at all your books.
Absolutely. It's a disease in our house. It's interesting. I was telling Celia actually the other day that this is the educational side.
Yeah.
My side is in the middle, and then my husband's sci-fi stuff is on the other
side. The hidden stuff.
Oh yeah.
I like
well,
sci-fi.
yeah. It's kind of a big thing, but yeah, it's you need to find different ways that you can employ on a dime almost to be able to find ways to control the adrenaline that's hitting or the chaos that's coming up. And I'm like you, I've experienced a near death for myself.
Yeah.
So it does change you.
Totally.
Completely. Yeah, absolutely. You have a different outlook. Talking about it for me is not a big deal because it doesn't bother me at all, but it might cause the person I'm talking to get a little wound up.
True.
We need to be careful, but we all have ways that we get through these different things, and that's what this Powering Through Life is all about, is what we did to get through the stuff. And I mean,
I think it's for most people, they just need to, I think the biggest step that anyone can take is the acceptance of the situation. Like
right.
You can't fight it. If there's nothing you can fight about it, then you have to accept it. So you can't run around and be angry or be sad or all the time. You just can't, because there's nothing. It doesn't matter what you want, whoever you pray to or whatever you do is irrelevant, because nothing's going to change the situation.
Absolutely true. And if you've got a negative outlook on it, that negativity is just going to hang on you, and it's going to roll off on everybody else that's around you.
Exactly.
And when you're in that situation you're in, you can't afford to have that, because it just wouldn't be good.
No. And and that was always top of mind. It was like, well, I have a 4-year-old, like, what do I do for him? Like, because this was his norm. He didn't know, like, you don't have many memories from earlier than that. So he didn't know any differently. But, so I tried to that's another reason I stayed so busy. I did everything, put him in baseball, put him in hockey, put him in anything, so that his life was as normal as it could be. So a lot of people said, you're crazy, why don't you just rest? And I'm like, well, I'll rest when he's gone. But right now, let me see what I can do to give him some type of normalcy, because the truth is, what people don't think about is their kids, they're all affected, but like usually, hopefully for the best, sometimes not, but hopefully for the best. But I have incredibly responsible kids, because they had so much that they had to do at an early age. So they all had their chores, right? Because there was nobody else to help. So it's, you have to remember those things. How do they become really great and responsible? It's, well, how you reacted to the situation, right?
Yeah, because however you react, whether it be negative or positive, you're teaching them something.
Absolutely.
They're watching. They watch
all the time.
Yeah, you can't get away with it. Was there any rebellion at all from the kids?
No. You know what? No, I think everyone knew how, and I've been a parent that I've always raised my kids. I tell them, I just talk like I do always. So there's nothing that I hide from them. I treat them as, responsible people that make good decisions. And so they were incredibly helpful, and not like they almost too much, right? My daughter was going off to university, wasn't so comfortable going, wanted to cut short her, because she felt guilty about not being there to help. So I had, as I said, the opposite. But, a 4-year-old, the truth is, when you're asking, 6, 7, 8, whatever, to go empty urine bottles for their dad, like it's a different perspective on how you grew up in life, right? So
Absolutely.
you have to be conscious. You're the choice. You're the one who chose to bring them here. So you have to be conscious to say, am I acting appropriately enough to be a good role model? And if you have to cry, go cry in the corner somewhere where they can't see you, but don't, and don't, make sure they don't think everything's great, but you also have to, you're the one who has to, show them the way, right?
Exactly. And they need to know the truth. And
Yeah,
if you withhold the truth if you withhold the truth from them, they're going to know.
you're going to know.
And they're going to react to the missing information when they do find out. So why not
Exactly.
just tell them the truth, how things are,
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know?
and I remember when my little guy's friends would come over, and they were all naturally scared, right? Because there's this big guy in a wheelchair, and he's got patches over his eyes, and and they were scared, and the little one would just be like, "Oh, that's my dad," and then they'd like nothing, because to him that was a normal dad, right? Like he didn't know the difference.
Right.
So and then eventually his friends came around, because they were like, "Oh yeah, he's fine," like because no one taught them any different. They didn't know, right?
And you can't really teach them any different unless they've been exposed to that, or
Right,
someone in the family's been exposed to that, because you can
right.
talk about it till you're blue in the face, but until you experience it and you're in it, you don't understand.
Absolutely. And I honestly, I can't say this enough. I never thought it would happen to me. I had that checklist that I got the kids, check, 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 got a house, got a cottage, you know what, I'm going to retire when I'm young so I can watch the kids grow up. So I had that entire checklist. Nothing bad ever happened up till then in my life. And like I said, in 10 seconds, everything changed. No more checklists, no more check sheets. And, it's, there's nothing, like there's a polar opposite, right? Polar opposite of what you expected. So
Totally. But it's all in how you handle it. And obviously,
absolutely.
you've done an exceptional job, Faye, because I've only met your daughter. She is an exceptional human being. I really liked my time with her.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, they're all doing well. They're all
yeah, good.
entrepreneurs, even the little one. so
You've
so
taught them well, Mom.
they're I did. Yeah, well, like I said, I like them to make good decisions, right? And I just said, okay, well, are you going to make more money working at the car wash or doing videos online? And you know what I mean? Like, so if you give them the freedom, they turn out to be pretty amazing human beings.
That's true. And teach them well and expose them to things. And, hopefully everything will turn out the way it should be. And it has so far. So,
And well, just I just want to comment a big shout out to you, Teresa, given what you went through, and here you are, like spreading information and news for people that need it to help them move past it. So, that's quite an accomplishment in itself. Because how many episodes have you done now?
yeah, several dozen.
So
Yeah, thank you, Faye. I
yeah,
appreciate that.
yeah,
Yeah, and that was the whole reason behind this. I'm sitting there after my episode of near death,
yeah,
trying to figure out how I can contribute to the world. And first came the book, then came coaching and the podcast, or sorry, the book, podcasting, and then coaching.
yeah,
And they all fit hand in
absolutely,
hand. And
yeah,
that's why I wanted to bring this out, real stories from real people,
yeah,
because we all go through stuff in life.
yeah,
And it's nice to know that we're not alone,
right,
because we're really not. This has happened to somebody else. We just haven't met that person yet. And
right,
maybe by, someone hearing this episode, they'll say, "Oh my goodness, that happened to me too. Oh, geez, I'm not
exactly,
alone."
yeah.
And that's the whole part. We're communal
Yeah,
beings,
absolutely.
and
Yeah,
we need to know that.
yeah, I agree. And it's just, if people, it's not just people that things have happened to, and they feel like they're with some, but it's also the people that are around them realize, perhaps listening to one story, that perhaps they've not really paid attention to how hard it is for their friend or their sister or whoever. And so they might, I remember when I was speaking on a stage in Vancouver, And I think, I don't know, there's 1,000 people or something. And I do a Q&A at the end. And I said, anyone wants to ask me a question. And a woman stood up and she said, what happened to your husband happened to my sister's husband. And I've been trying, I call her all the time and say, let me take you out to dinner. Let me get you away for a while. And she said, what do you think I should do? And I said, well, I think she'd probably prefer if you just go over and clean her toilets. And she just looked at me and she said, what? And I said, because everybody wants to take you for dinner, but you don't want to be happy. You don't feel like it yet, right? You don't feel like this dinner out. But man, if somebody could come take your garbage out or clean your toilets.
Exactly.
And she started crying and she's like, oh my God, I never thought of it. I'm going to go back and do that. So for me, at the time, how hard it was to fly all the way to Vancouver, because it's hard. But so I took the time away from the kids. It took a long time to organize so I could go. And then I get there and I remember thinking in that moment that the trip was worth it for that one woman. Absolutely. Because her sister, will feel like at least somebody gets it for even if it's, one day.
Yeah. And you're right. Cleaning the toilet or taking out the garbage for someone
Right.
is monumental.
Right.
Absolutely.
And then people think it's trivial. It's not.
No, it's not. And when I went through my car accident and I was left with a neck that was described as a piece of spaghetti with a bowling ball sitting on top of it. So that's how fragile my neck was. And there was no one that came and helped do anything.
Right.
My husband worked an hour and a half away. So that was an hour and a half each way. So, and I wasn't able to make the meals at that point in time because I could not hold my head up. But, that was isolation and no one there to help. So I guess that leads to my nature of being so bloody independent that you can do everything yourself.
Yeah, that's true. Me too.
Yeah. But it comes to a point, that needs to stop too. And I've made some steps recently to help out in the home here. And so we do what we need to do, right?
Yeah. And so I think if people understand that they can be of a huge, huge help to someone, then, think just, it's that whole empathy part, like try to understand like what it would be like to be them. And then maybe it would make you understand what would help to be as a friend, because the truth, we don't need, the end of the day, I can do my own toilets if I have to, right? But it's what's more important is that somebody understands that that's why you can't go to dinner, or you can't take this opportunity, or the girls are going out to have coffee. You can't, because that's an hour or two of your tightly scheduled day. Right. And you just don't have the time, right? So
and
those are the kind of things.
Yeah, you may not also have the energy either from doing all this extra stuff too. I mean, right now we're in Ontario, southwestern Ontario, where all the leaves are flying off the trees.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be nice to have someone come and rake your yard?
Exactly. Exactly. And I can honestly count on like one hand how many, at the beginning, how many people actually, the people that helped the most was my parents, right? Who were in their 80s. So it's just fast. And then my kids, obviously, like, if you have really strong inner, your close family, my kids, that really helped. But other than that, you gotta, pull up your big girl pants and take out your garbage.
There is that. And it's funny because when Celia and I were talking the other day, the garbage was mentioned. So how we're talking about that now. But you know what, Faye, I really appreciate you sharing this story and this journey with us. And is there one key point that you would like to leave the listeners with?
I think it's just that it doesn't, a lot of people will listen to me and say, oh, I could never do what she did. And the truth is you can, and you will if the situation presents itself. And just, remember what I'm saying now, which is simply that you can figure out your path and you can get through it. So it's not insurmountable. You just have to just take a deep breath and say, okay, what's my next step? what's my next step?
Yeah, I think that's very important. And, if there is help out there, to find it,
Yeah.
is really, if I've been through that too. So
Yeah.
it's just, there isn't always help, but you have to
No.
depend on number one at the end of the day, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And that's what people sometimes forget.
Well, and you know what? I honestly think we are stronger and more courageous than what we think we are.
Yeah,
We
absolutely.
just haven't been put in that really intense situation yet to know that we've got the skills there.
Exactly. Exactly. But when you are, it's amazing what you'll realize about yourself.
That's true. Now, Faye, would you like the listeners to contact you?
Sure. If you're interested in hearing more of my story or what I do, it's a very simple URL. It's FayChapple, FayChapple.com. Or you can find me on a podcast too. My podcast is called Call Me Casey. So if you listen, you'll understand why it's called that.
Yeah, very true. Thank you for sharing that. That's great. And if anyone would like to get in touch with me as well, and if you'd like to have more information about my coaching programs or the podcast, get in touch with me. Mine is very simple too. It's Teresa@teresasims.com. So reach out to both Faye and I. We would love to hear from you. And
Absolutely.
Faye, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Teresa. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Take care, everyone. We'll see you next time.
That brings to a close another great, inspiring interview on Powering Through Life. Thank you to my incredible guest for sharing your thoughts and wisdoms with our listeners. If you would like to connect with us, go to www.teresasims.com. And there you will also find all the previous segments from many amazing and inspiring people. Remember, don't be shy. Reach out if you have any questions or just leave me a comment. So thank you once again for listening to Powering Through Life.